Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, with co-host Matt Carter, and we're also joined by a special guest, Jamie Shaw of Absolute Basketball, joining us to talk a little bit of NC State men's basketball recruiting. Before we get too far into this episode, this podcast is brought to you in part by JFQ Lending. With interest rates below 3%, there has never been a better time to lock in a low fixed interest rate on your mortgage. You'll never need to think about refinancing again. Set it and forget it. And with JFQ Lending, you are guaranteed to get the highest level of customer service. They have an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and over 3,000 five-star reviews. Give Hunter Clausen a call today at 480-513-3992 or email Hunter directly at hclausen@jfqlending.com. That's HCLAUSSEN at jfqlending.com. JFQ Lending, Inc., Equal Access Lender, licensed in over 40 states, www.jfqlending.com. And while you're at it, head over to thewolfpacker.com and use promo code PACK60. That's promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. Get up to date on everything football, basketball, recruiting, plus the inside scoop on everything that's going on in Wolfpack athletics at the moment. So use that promo code PACK60, join the conversation in the message boards, and get inside all of your insider intel. And of course, before we get started with this podcast, please remember to subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. We're on Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcast app, and you can always listen to us on thewolfpacker.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got our post-game press conferences, highlights of the games, get some recruiting highlights coming up soon. So please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel. And another reminder, this is a good segue into our guest, Jamie Shaw. He runs a great YouTube channel himself over there at Absolute Basketball, and we frequently share his videos of all the Wolfpack targets and signees and recruits. So he does a great job of getting some highlight tapes of those guys if you want to see what they're doing before they get to Raleigh. So give his YouTube channel a subscribe as well. It's Absolute Basketball, Jamie? Is that the YouTube channel?
Absolute Basketball Experience with Jamie Shaw.
Awesome. Well, go support him. And, of course, go give him a follow on Twitter as well, at JamieShaw5. You can find that in the ticker below on this YouTube video. So, Jamie, first of all, thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to talking a little bit of recruiting with you here. I want to start with a signee that I believe did not yet commit before we had you on the most recent podcast, Breon Pass. Reidsville, North Carolina. He's having an awfully hot start to his senior year of high school basketball for Reidsville Senior High. I don't think he's had a game yet where he scored less than 31 points, but he's just stuffing stat sheets at the moment. All in on basketball, was a guy that, could have had his pick in terms of football as well, just a all-around talented athlete, but he's all in on basketball, and he's all in on the Wolfpack. He's now a signee in the 2021 class. So, Jamie, since the last time we've seen you, I just want to get your most recent thoughts on Breon Pass, his hot start to the high school basketball season, and what the Wolfpack is getting in Breon Pass.
Yeah, Justin, the first one to start off, man, you read that ad promo very well. That was good. Understandable, and that was a great job with that.
Shout out JFQ.
Yeah, there you go, man. Shout out to JFQ, man. They picked the right person. But yeah, so Breon, whenever Kevin Keats was first hired from Wilmington, there was this big push, and it's very true. Kevin Keats is a winner, all this type of stuff being put around about him. You have that same type of stuff with Breon Pass. You see in Breon that Breon Pass is a winner. He brings those intangibles to a team, not even to the court, but to a team that finds people rallying around him. He's a very popular person. He's going to have people rally around him. He's going to be a leader from day one. He goes out and gives it his all, but he's just got that certain it factor about him. Kind of like people were saying with Kevin Keats when he first came on and all that type of stuff. And Kevin Keats is a winner. Breon Pass is a winner. He's somebody who goes out and just produces any which way possible, whatever it takes to win a ball game. If you look at his overall, I don't have the exact numbers with me, but between football and basketball, if you look at his overall numbers, overall wins and losses. I bet it's something unbelievable. Between the two sports. I know that he's played in 3 straight state championship games in football. I know that football's. I don't even know if he's going to play football this year because it's after the basketball season and stuff. But I don't know how that's going to work out. But he's played in 3 state championship games leading up into this year. And in basketball, he's made deep runs in the playoffs each year with Reidsville as well. On the floor as a player, tough, hard-nosed, gritty, strong. Everything that you would expect from a coach's kid. His dad played basketball at Old Dominion in college as well. He can shoot the cover off the ball. So there's a lot of stuff that he brings to the table, being able to guard the ball, being able to really shoot the ball, and also being a pretty high-level athlete, able to play above the rim and at the rim at 5'11", 6 foot tall.
I recently went to go try and see him at the Durham School of the Arts here recently, but went to the front doors and realized they weren't letting in any media. They weren't even letting in fans. So only those on the bench were able to watch that game, but I think he had another 31-point solid performance, and Reidsville Senior High was able to win that game pretty handedly. But I was able to talk to Breon the following day. He was kind enough to hop on the phone with me for an interview when he talks about the family environment that he has at NC State. He seems very close with Coach Keats and the entire coaching staff. He couldn't single out one assistant coach when I was trying to get it out of him of who he might have a close relationship with. He's close to all those guys, and he's in contact with the current freshman guards, the Terquavian Smith, his fellow 2021 classmates, and there's already kind of this family feel to Breon at NC State. So it will be exciting to see what he brings to the table come later this year. But when I asked him what one area of his game that he thinks he needs to improve upon the most before he gets to the college level, he told me finishing at the rim. And I was a bit surprised because I was watching some of his highlight tapes from you and others, and from what I've seen in the high school basketball season, he's really made a point of emphasis to get into the lane, drive to the basket, and hasn't seemed to have any issues finishing. Of course, the competition's going to get much tougher at the college level, but I'm curious, Jamie, from your experience watching him on the recruiting trail more so than I or Matt have, what have you seen in terms of him being able to finish? Is that something that's kind of a work in progress at the rim? I know he's a great shooter, and I know he can kind of get it done in many facets of the game. But what do you think about his ability to slash and create on his own at if he ever needs to take over at the point guard position as well?
I think that's something that he can do and he's capable of doing with his strength, body control. He can take a bump and finish and all that type of stuff. But it's also something that most high school point guards have to learn how to do. You're going from two-way public school basketball at Reidsville, going up against the likes of the Manny Bates of the world. High-level rim protectors, 6'10" with long arms, that swat things into the third row on routinely. That takes an adjustment period, because right now in high school, he's probably going against a 6'4" guy that might also be a defensive, lineman on the football team as well. There's just a difference there. It's always, for the most part, an adjustment point of adjustment for most guards coming into the college game, finishing at the rim. But I think he's got the tools to be able to do that. He's got, as you saw in his football stuff, being a slot returner and all that type of stuff, he's got unbelievable body control and balance and all that. Also the athleticism and strength to be able to get in, take a contact, and then still be able to finish, there as well. So I don't think long-term that's going to be that much of an issue. And I don't think it's anything of worry current day.
Quick point before I let Matt ask his first question, but I like what you said about his, well-roundedness from the football field translating to the basketball court, because that's what I was able to see on this highlight tape. It's like he's got that strong footwork of a football player. You can see that when he's splitting screens, or it's not like he's jumping off the film with some crazy elite quickness, or he's not going to be the fastest guy on the court necessarily, but his footwork, he's very sound in every step he makes on the court. So I think that's what jumps out with Breon. I like that comment. But Matt, go ahead. I know you've got plenty of questions for Mr. Shaw here.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Jamie had knows Kevin Keith probably longer than any of us. As we're gonna get ready to talk about some 2022 kids, I just want you to maybe explain. Maybe you have the answer and can help a lot of us understand. What is it with Kevin Keats and guards, particularly point guards? I mean, he got Shaquille Moore. We got Cam Hayes, Breon Pass, and the first guy we're going to talk about in the 2022 class is another guy, kind of a point guard, combo guard. Why does he love the point guard so much?
Yeah, if you look at the way that he plays, it's conducive to a point guard. Offensively, they play the high pick and roll, the side pick and roll, but they allow their point guard to have the ball in their hands and create a play for the rest of the people on the floor. Also, as well, on the defensive end, pressure the ball, pressure the ball, pressure the ball. So most of his stuff that he does is predicated from the point guard position, from having multiple ball handlers on the floor, being able to shoot, handle, pass, create, play in the pick and roll, and guard the ball, defend the ball, play tough nose defense for 94 feet on that end of the floor as well. So, just play style, the way that he plays, the way that he teaches, the way that he has his team is conducive to having guards that are able, to play in that way.
That kind of leads me, because one of the guys that we know NC State is hot and heavy on is Jaden Epps, probably a point guard from Suffolk, Virginia. You put up some video that you can see on YouTube, or go to Jamie's Twitter account. He put up some video. We retweeted it the other day. NC State is hot on him. So You've obviously seen him. You know quite a bit about him. You just kind of introduced Jaden to NC State fans listening to this podcast, and what kind of basketball player he is.
Yeah, sure. So Jaden, I guess, put out a top 6 recently. NC State was on the list with others like Providence and Florida, on that list of 6. He is a high-scoring guard. The St. James bubble that just happened a couple of weeks ago, he led the entire bubble in scoring. I think he had like 26 or so per game. He scored over 700 points high school season last year, was the co-state champion. Obviously, they couldn't play the state championship game with Kings Fork, and then leading into this year, they're not playing this season. Their entire conference has opted out of playing because of COVID. But they're coming in as a nationally ranked top 50 program behind Jaden. Jaden, he's a scoring guard. He's got an incredible feel of just being able to put the ball in the basket. He can shoot the ball at a high level. He moves well off the ball. He knows his spots that he gets to on the floor, and he's got the utmost confidence in his ability to be able to score the basketball.
You kind of view him more naturally. You said a scoring guard. Is he more naturally better to be kind of off the ball with another point guard, or could he handle being a point guard?
Well, in Kevin Keats' system, Kevin Keats wants playmakers at the guard position. Not necessarily ones, not necessarily twos, but guys who can create offense. Jaden Epps can create offense. With that high pick and roll, being able to get into the paint and then make a play. Jaden Epps sees the floor incredibly well and all that type of stuff. He creates offense. And I think that's what Kevin Keats looks for in his guys that play the traditional, or as you would call it, a point guard spot for him.
I want to ask you about another kid in the state of this one, moving towards the state of North Carolina. Actually, I want to ask you about another kid in Virginia. There's a lot of kids I want to ask you about.
Sure.
But another kid in the state of Virginia who is a dynamic scorer, or at least statistically speaking, Tyler Nickel. He's from Elkton, Virginia, East Rockingham High School. Rivals list him at 6'7", 215. We kind of joke off air about how you can never know about some of these heights and weights with some of these high school kids. But, this is a guy who scored a lot of points in his career. He's almost scored 1,500 points in his first 2 seasons of high school basketball. That's a crap load.
Yeah.
What is it about Tyler Nickel that stands out, and how he's able to score the basketball?
Well, interesting enough about Tyler Nickel, he's the all-time Virginia state leader scoring as a freshman and also as a sophomore. So, as freshmen on the varsity level, J.J. Redick, Joe Smith, Allen Iverson, et cetera, Mac McClung, he scored the most points his freshman year and his sophomore year, of anybody ever in VHSL history. Obviously, this year's been cut short, so I'm not entirely sure he's going to keep up with that pace, but he was on pace to break the record. All that being said, he's a hybrid forward, very skilled offensively, who can score the basketball. He can shoot it, he can handle it, he can push the break. He's in that 6'7", 6'8" range, very sturdy build, as you can tell with his 215, 220 pound frame. He's a workhorse. He's a workaholic. He's a guy who wants all the smoke. He's going to talk his talk, and he's going to go out and produce every single time out. He's one of those guys. He would come into NC State, were he to come to NC State, and be an instant fan favorite. the NC State alumni and the guys that go to the games and stuff. We just fall in love with him off the bat. And he's the type of guy that has a charisma and a skill set about him too. I think that he's the type of guy as well. I think Rivals has him right now at the 90s, somewhere in that area. He's the type of guy that if he chooses the right system to go to, he could far outplay that ranking throughout his college career.
Is he a guy that could be like a small ball four, or is he best suited to be, or stretch four, I guess you could call it, which I think Kevin Keatts would ideally like to have, it's a nice stretch four option. But do you see him more naturally being kind of a wing?
It depends on system. I think traditionally he's more of a four-man. But if you play different types of zones or all that type of stuff where you can kind of hide him a little bit on the defensive end of the floor, because he's going to work hard. He's going to have great positioning and footwork on that end as well. He could probably play some three, but I think he's more traditionally of a four-man, a small ball type of mismatch guy who's incredibly skilled and versatile. And that's the role at NC State that he would slot into, is that kind of playmaking, door four-man role.
Go ahead, Justin.
Not to switch gears too much here on you, Jamie, but I do want to go back to the 2021 class because I'm curious to see what the end result may look like. Right now you've got Breon Pass, Quavian Smith as a couple guards, signees, and then you got Ernest Ross as a forward who, in my eyes looks like maybe could play a small ball four, maybe likes to play from the perimeter a little bit. We'll see how the jump shot develops. But for the longest time, it seemed like maybe that fourth piece was going to be another big, whether it was, I know some targets that have now committed to other schools with Roosevelt Wheeler going to Louisville or Jonas Idu going to Marquette. Do you see another big that you've, heard of, that NC State might be fixating on to try to get a big in this class? Or do you think maybe Keatts will try to add another guard, maybe get or maybe even like a wing type of guard like a Devin Daniels to replace him, since he's probably going to be gone after this season?
Yeah, so I think that right now keeping one in the pocket is going to be what they do, because you have to look at the transfer wire as well. Mm-hmm. There's guys that are entering the transfer portal every day now, and then as the season plays out and progresses, there'll be more that jump in there as well. So I would assume or think that they're probably going to not do anything with that final spot until, and also too, their own roster. There could be movement in that as well. So it's kind of one of those things to hold on to that one spot and see where things are at as the season comes toward the end, and then kind of move there.
No, that's a really good point, because one thing that's come up a lot during this season, particularly with all the pauses and the breaks and the lack of a summer to develop some of these younger guys, is that you see some of the inexperience really start to weigh on teams that are maybe struggling in the 2020-2021 season. You look at how many freshmen came in the 2020 class. You got 3 more on the way in 2021. Maybe they could use a more experienced guy with that last spot. We'll see, but I like that point a lot. Just from a macro perspective, it seems like the transfer market is becoming more and more so the Wild West, if you will. How do you see that, translating to the recruiting scene, and particularly, in the age of COVID, where these coaches can't necessarily get in the gym with these guys as much or get as much face-to-face contact? Do you see greater tendency from some of these coaches to go with a transfer or an experienced guy that they've got some college tape on versus kind of the unknowns of what you can get out of a recruit? Do you see that at the Power 5 level as much, or maybe trickling down to some of the lower levels as well?
Well, I think it'll be both. I think that you'll definitely see the portal getting larger and more robust with guys entering and being available. And I think too that the coaches will now, you hit on a great point there. College tape is a whole lot more true than high school tape. And taking a college guy too, that you're going to get a guy who's been through the rigors of, the process of being a student and athlete and waking up at, 5 a.m. for workouts and weight training and going to class and all that type of stuff. You'll be getting a guy that's been there and done that. And a lot of times guys that are going to the high major level, they've had success before at the collegiate level as well. So there's a whole lot more of a high floor in those type of guys theoretically. The high school level, though, I mean, if you get in the ACC type schools, they're able to get the best of the best in the high school level as well. So those guys are the big time talents and all that too. So I think that you're going to see from the NC State standpoint, from the ACC standpoint, obviously, as you see too, Keats loves older guys. He's taking transfers even with the sit out rule every single year. He's still taking that mentality of get older, stay older with him also, while using development stuff from the high school kids as well. So that's a very long-winded answer that probably didn't answer your question at all. But I think at the high major level, you're going to see a mixture of guys. Take a transfer where it makes sense. Still go after the high school guys where it makes sense as well. But I think as you get to the lower levels, the mid majors, the low majors, those will take a lot of transfers. Probably even more so transfers than they will high school kids at the lower levels.
I thought you answered my question just fine, Jamie, and you can't fault these ACC coaches for wanting to maybe explore that route a little bit more with some of the experienced guys. When you see guys like Carlik Jones at Louisville, what he's doing this season, he's one of the best players in the ACC, on the short list for ACC Player of the Year. You get a guy like Sam Hauser at Virginia. I mean, not that every transfer is going to work out that great; they won't most of the time. But the case in point is that it is a winning formula at times. But Matt, do you have some more questions on the 2022 class so we can get back more on the high school recruiting talent?
Yeah, let's take a look at some of these in-state guys. The first guy I'm going to mention, technically not playing in the state of North Carolina, but I believe he's a Durham native at Oak Hill Academy. MJ Rice tore his ACL. I think before the torn ACL, everybody was fast-tracking him to be a surefire, 5-star, blue blood recruitment. It seems to me, on the limited that I've seen of him this year, he's doing fine post ACL. NC State, one of the more prominent schools. I know Louisville after him pretty good, and I'm sure some of these other schools monitor him very closely. But what have you seen out of MJ Rice post ACL, and what do you see as his upside going up?
MJ Rice is the best player at Oak Hill right now. You look at Oak Hill teams, without question. You look at Oak Hill teams of the past, and their best player on their team is typically an NBA draft pick. That is not to say now that MJ Rice is going to be an NBA draft pick. He's certainly on a trajectory, and there's very real possibilities that if things go right for him, that he could absolutely be an NBA type of draft pick. But he's in that type of conversation. He's a bona fide 5-star. He is a Durham native. He started his high school career off at Durham Academy. He's big, strong wing. This kind of got a full skill set to go along with toughness and explosion. I think right now they're saying that he's at about 80%, with the knee and stuff, as you guys well know, with the technology these days, knee injuries, they're healed physically pretty quickly. It's the mental aspect that usually takes a little bit longer to get to. He's coming around on that. I mean, he's averaging, I think, 18 a game, getting a ton of rebounds, defending, just a full-on type of game. And he's a program-changing type of recruit to be able to get, for Keats. And he's probably one, too. Keats has gotten program-changing recruits in the past. It's just that they've both gone to the NBA. Yeah. So I don't think that MJ Rice necessarily is on that same path that Josh Hall, Jalen LeCue was, but he's also on that same type of program-changing trajectory. And Keats and his staff, obviously, with those guys, have shown that he can get it done, getting the right guys in as well. Hopefully, possibly this time with a little bit better luck of showing up on campus.
That last point makes – I don't want to get too off topic on 2022, but the last point about the none and dones or the potential to bring a program-changing recruit and then it doesn't work out at NC State the last couple of years. Do you think – based on that last 2-year experience, do you think that maybe changes any type of strategy on the recruiting trail of maybe not necessarily going for – not that you don't, suit them and you go after them, but do you maybe focus more on those guys that are going to have to go to college and develop a little bit, the guys that maybe can't go immediately to the NBA or maybe get a contract even if it's not a draft pick, not just at NC State, but league-wide in the ACC? Do you see maybe a strategy change coming now or in the near future?
Me personally, obviously I'm not in the war room with these guys and whatnot, but me personally, I will always go after the best possible player that I could possibly get. And if they end up going pro, they end up going pro. If they end up coming to my school, they end up coming to my school. But I'm going to try to go after the best possible player that I can get where it makes sense. That's in my recruiting footprint. Obviously, if there's a top 5 player out in Southern California and I'm NC State, I don't know if it makes sense to go after that guy. But if there's a top 5 player that's in, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, I'm going to do everything I can to get him on my campus.
Let me ask about another in-state kid in North Carolina. This kid that NC State fans have probably asked about a lot, and then he picked up an offer from UNC, and then they all probably groaned quite a bit. And that was Deontay Green from Christ School, which is right outside of Asheville, North Carolina. He claims he grew up an NC State fan. Then I saw articles where he talked about being of a family of both Duke and UNC fans. So might be one of those that kind of diplomatic in his answers. That might be a good way to put it. But I know UNC is the trending school with Deontay Green, but maybe something happened, they fill up, I don't know, and he's back available for an NC State, or maybe NC State beats out of UNC. I know he's decided to stay in 2022 for now. Where do you see him fitting in college and the upside that he has? And do you think it was the right decision for him to potentially stick to 2022?
Well, I think with Deontay, for I guess about a month ago, he transferred to Asheville Christian School in Swannanoa, just up the road from Christ School or whatnot. That's where Caleb Mills went, George Shepard, Asheville Christian. So he's playing with Asheville Christian now. He's a skilled 4-man. He's got a good frame, good basketball body. And him staying in 2022, I think that might go with the school that he wants to go to, because there was talk early before the UNC offer came of him coming out early, being in the 21 class. His original class, he's a reclass kid back to 2022, so he was originally a 2021 when he started high school. So coming out in his original class, but he, that may be indicative as to what school he wants to go to and where they want him to come in at. But he's a skilled 4-man. He can shoot the 3 ball. He can put it on the floor. When he's active around the basket is when he's at his best, using his length, using some mismatch type stuff that he has around the basket. And that's when he's at his best, playing his best game on the block.
Then one last in-state kid before I turn it over to Justin. And an intriguing guy, I think. He's a big man. Looks like a pure big man from the Winston-Salem area. My hometown, shout out Winston-Salem. Brandon White. Stock is on the rise. Plays at Winston-Salem Christian, unless he changed schools recently too, and I don't really know about that one. Got quite a few offers. Yeah. What kind of upside does he have, and does he kind of fit the mold of a big man that Kevin Keats likes?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Brandon White, and you look directly at Manny Bates. They have a lot of the same type of skill set and tools, kind of raw offensively, but natural high-level rim protection ability. He's got great length. He's got nice pop, and he can rebound and block shots. He can do that right now. And you look at the success that Keats has had with Manny Bates, kind of having that exact same description as a high school player. And you see a beautiful fit. Also of note there, the Winston-Salem Christian coach is also Shaquille Moore and Josh Hall's high school coach. As well. So, the staff has a relationship with him, and he's going to be heavily involved in the recruitment and all that type of stuff as well. Brandon White is somebody that I would look closely to, both from a fit standpoint, from a relationship standpoint, and all that type of stuff as well, as the Wolfpack go. But I think that there's very clear success, very clear path for Brandon White to follow kind of the mold that Manny Bates has set forth.
Go ahead, Justin.
Well, Jamie, I did want to talk to you about the 2020 class and what you've seen so far on the court from those guys, based on the limited 10, 11 game sample size that we've seen in 2020, 21. But before we get there, I want to just ask you one kind of opinion question on Breon Pass, because when Coach Keats talks about Pass, he kind of has a similar tone to the way he talked about Shaquille Moore, in the sense that he sees him as the steal of the class. You know, a guy that isn't necessarily as high on the rankings as maybe he would evaluate, or Breon Pass may actually be. Would you agree with that assessment, that, you know, looking at these three guys that are currently NC State signees, or even league-wide, just looking at, you know, what's coming in 2021, do you think steal the class is a fair characterization of Breon?
I think in completely different ways. He was with Shaquille Moore. Breon, I think, is a program guy. He's a guy that's going to come in, not going to give you any issues. He's going to come in from day one, be ready to compete. He's going to make everybody around him better, and all that type of stuff on the court. Shaquille Moore was a steal of the class because he's a game-changing player who would come in and, as we're seeing now, change the game, change the dynamic of the game. He could be a star on the team at NC State, and NC State picked him up, with the recruitment that was below the level of talent that Shaquille Moore was. So I think that both of those guys are incredibly conducive to winning. You need both of those types of guys on the team. You need the team guys that are going to build camaraderie. They're going to build just atmosphere and culture, like a Breon Pass. And then you need guys that are going to go on the court and change the dynamic of the game and flip it on its head, like a Shaquille Moore. But I think in completely different ways. I think they're both similarly steals in coming onto the team.
Well, that leads us perfectly to the guy I wanted to start with in the 2020 class, Shaquille Moore. We had you on, I think, into the summer in 2020, and you told us he's going to be a dog on the floor. I think you used a little bit more of an a-hole on the court, if you will. He's got a little a-hole in him. And you see that on the court. I mean, you saw it day one on the defensive end. He's clearly a very talented defender. But getting into December, starting in that Carolina game, you really start to saw it come out on the offensive end too. He's a guy that can, in flashes, knock down some perimeter shots. He's fearless. I mean, he in that Boston College game made the game-winning shot there at the end in a close contest with the Eagles. So is Shaquille Moore kind of living up to what you forecasted in 2020, or maybe even potentially exceeding some of the expectations that you may have had for him in year one?
Well, no, Shaquille Moore is one of those ones that if you saw him play in high school, in my opinion, you knew that he was this level of player. A lot of people didn't. I guess I don't know if they didn't see him in high school or they just didn't see it, or whatever the case may be. But it was one of those things. I mean, he went up to the NBPA camp. Was like top 2 or 3 in the camp in steals. Watched numerous times where high-level point guards that were top, 25 guys in the class would get rid of the ball. He would guard them the first time up the floor. He would create havoc for them, and then they didn't want any part of it the rest of the time and just give it up and then just run up the floor and let the other guy bring it up. And that relentlessness on that end of the floor, I haven't seen anybody. The only other person that comes to mind kind of how defended that way was like Devontae Shuler when he was at Oak Hill. Just havoc, just created just all types of kamikaze stuff on the defensive end. Shaquille Moore was that same way because his body control and his balance, his anticipation, his strength, his quickness, his ability to stay in front but also read the passing lanes. There was one time I was watching him play, guarding the ball 94 feet. The guy went to pass the ball, and he just picks it off the catch and starts going the other way with it. Just unbelievable type stuff that you just don't see people do normally. Shaquille Moore kind of has all that in him. And then on offense, I mean, that was that. I'm not going to say that was a question mark. His offensive game is unorthodox for his size. He's ridiculously athletic and above the rim. He attacks, the basket with. He has pace, but he's also got like an aggression to get downhill. He's got, again, the balance, the ability the shift and the wiggle, I guess, to get to the rim. The shot is a set shot. Takes a little bit of while to come off the hand, but he can knock it down when he gets a clean look at it. He's just a difference maker on the floor. And he fits what Kevin Keats wants to do on the court perfectly. That's one of the things when he committed there was no doubt in my mind that he would have huge success because he fits what Keats does, and Keats would have a hard time early taking him off the floor.
Well, you saw that athleticism firsthand when after he knocked down a couple in the first meeting between the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels in December in PNC Arena, knocked a couple from the corner, and then Garrison Brooks has got to close him out in the second half, and then he drives to the basket and had probably the dunk of the year in the ACC so far over Kessler, the 7-footer for Carolina, just a jaw-dropping dunk. And he had another one of those just jaw-dropping dunks kind of out of nowhere in the Florida State game. At that point, it was already kind of a blowout. Florida State was up 20 points, but out of nowhere, the announcers were just jaw-dropped at how his face was basically at the rim, and it wasn't an important bucket, but it was a bucket that makes you go, wow, well, he is a game-changing type of talent. He has come back a little bit to earth in the with his shooting as of recently. After that, streak of 3 games where he had double figures, was a very efficient shooter, has kind of dropped back down and was still shooting at a similar volume. Do you think the consistency is going to come in maybe year 2 or year 3 with him, or you gotta just? Is it kind of like a microwave effect for now, like it's going to come in waves?
Well, just like with most freshmen, the speed of the game, the length, longevity of a season and all that type of stuff, trying to get stuff in at this point in time, trying to play games and not really knowing week to week what games you're going to actually be playing. And there's a whole lot of uncertainty, not having a preseason, just kind of getting thrown right in and stuff. Inconsistency is – expected, I guess, with most of the freshman class coming in most of the time. So you would hope, depending on the amount of work that he puts in, that he would continue to get better and better and better. And that consistency will, as he understands the playbook more, as he understands his teammates more, as he understands the grind more, as he gets more familiar with that, consistency will come.
I want to talk about the other 4-star guard freshman in the backcourt, Cam Hayes, a guy that, in the first 3 or 4 games, you're thinking this is going to be the star of the 2020 class for NC State this year. Was just incredible on both ends of the floor. I think he had 15 assists to maybe 1 or 2 turnovers in his first 3 games or something like that. Just incredible type of numbers for a freshman. And then you saw the pause, and he was out for 3 weeks. He was one of the guys that wasn't the first to come back. He returned for the Carolina game 3 weeks after NC State had their first pause due to COVID in December. And he hasn't really been the same since. He's shown some flashes. I think the Carolina game back in December is probably his best game back since. But what do you make of Hayes, what you've seen so far? Maybe you saw the potential at the beginning of the year, and then I think as spectators, we kind of underestimate some of the impacts that these long pauses make, particularly on some of these younger guys.
Well, when you look at Hayes, going back to Shaquille Moore as well, you see Shaquille, he's compact, he's burst, he's all that. Well, Hayes is long and smooth and fluid. They're almost, night and day, both equally talented, just different types of packaging for their skill set. And Hayes has that smooth game to him. He can shoot the ball. He can, he's gets the ball to the right spots and all that type of stuff. A good team defender and everything. Kind of almost I guess in NC State terms, the fire and ice type of situation in the backcourt.
Easy, Jamie. That's a big comparison.
I'm just using terms.
I got you.
I'm just using terms.
I got you.
And the differences. Again, Hayes is a freshman. Anybody that saw Hayes saw that, his body's going to need a little bit of work coming in. I think the grind of the ACC season going up against all these, big, strong guards and stuff. Hayes is going to see that he's going to need to put on some weight still, which every 18, 19-year-old kid, is going to have to do. But you've seen what he can do in that system. And I think Kevin Keats' offense is tailor-made to what Cam Hayes does, playing in that high pick and roll, and then making a read, whether it be the jump shot or whether it be the pass or getting to the paint and making a read, is very conducive to his skill set. So you would have to expect between both of those guys, the future is bright in the backcourt with those two.
And I want to wrap it up talking about the front court, some of the bigs. We got Ebenezer Duwana, Nick Farrar, and Jalen Gibson to kind of wrap up that 5-man 2020 class. And going into the year, we've actually seen this season Jalen Gibson's gotten the most time of those three. Maybe it wasn't the expectation going into the year. He was kind of characterized as more of a developmental project. Ebenezer Duwana was maybe that guy that Keats described as Manny Bates Jr. Maybe you would see him when Bates and Funderburk and even Helms were in foul trouble. Maybe he comes in and plays a couple minutes, but we haven't necessarily seen that. I know he's a guy that was out for extended time as well during that first COVID break, so maybe there's some conditioning elements to that. But did you expect any of those guys to be maybe making a little bit more of an impact in year one, or what's the forecast that you see with those three guys and what you've seen so far from them?
So I guess two-part question. Did I expect those guys to be making more of an impact in year one? No, did not coming in. But forecasting for the future, I think it makes sense looking at Jalen Gibson as to why he's the one that's kind of, getting on the court right now. Knowing Jalen, he's a hard worker and he understands, I guess, he picks things up quickly. Positioning and all that type of stuff, almost like, Manny Bates. Manny Bates' first year in, you had the shoulder surgery and all that type of stuff. People were questioning, was he good enough? Was he this? Was he that? And then, Manny Bates last year just came on the scene and did his thing. I think you might possibly be able to see a similar trajectory, not saying that Jalen Gibson is going to be Manny Bates, but coming out of high school, they have a lot of the same attributes with the length, with the mobility, with the work ethic and all that type of stuff, to where you can see some success in Jalen Gibson in this type of system and all that. Nick Farrar and Ebenezer, time will tell what they bring. Obviously, they're behind some guys, obviously. So I guess Bates, Funderburk, Gibson, and then Ebenezer's behind those guys. And then you have Helms, Daniels, and all those guys, and Farrar's behind them. So they didn't necessarily need to come in and do things immediately. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out moving forward with those two. I think that there is a path for them to be able to play. It's just how much they work for it. It's up to them. The ball's in their court for how much they work for it and getting to where they want to be at. Jalen Gibson's seen a little bit of success so far, as you said, with his ability to get on the floor and stuff. I think that just like with Manny Bates, there is a future down the line for Gibson to be a successful player within this system, doing some of the similar things that Bates does. Now, Bates is like the best in the country at what he does, or easily the best in the country at what he does. So not projecting Jalen Gibson to be the best in the country at what he does, but kind of in the similar path that he took to get there. I can see Gibson kind of similarly.
Any other questions?
I'm going to wrap it up with one question here. I'm going to put Jamie Shaw in the coach's seat. So you got hired by Kevin Keats. You're his new recruiting coordinator here. And we look at this 2022 class. First of all, congratulations on getting hired by Kevin Keats. I'm sure that comes with a nice pay raise and everything. But you're looking at 2022. Let's say hypothetically, Manny Bates would be a senior when these guys come in. Let's say he's still around. So, you got him at the big man. You got Cam Hayes and Shaquille Moore. And we didn't talk about Darion Sebron, who's shown some flashes, and maybe a Jalen Gibson. And, you got the three freshmen coming in. Pass to Kavion Smith and Ernest Ross, we haven't talked about, but maybe the most highly rated of the guys, the power forward. What would you identify, if you had to pick out a kind of three needs in 2022? What would you think they would be?
I'll give you two. I'll give you two names of players that I think are on the board, but also more so than the specific name of the players, the skill set that they possess for what I would go after. The first one, Brandon White, whom we already talked about, somebody who's an elite rim protector and rebounder. I think that this defense, for as much as they pressure the ball, it needs to be centered around a post player who can protect the rim, move his feet a little bit, and then clean up the glass on the defensive end of the floor. I think Brandon White does that. Now, specifically, if they're going to get Brandon White, to be seen, to be determined, but a player such as Brandon White is somebody that I would target. And then also a player such as Justin Taylor from Virginia, a 6'6" shot maker. I think that's something that this team has needed for the past couple years. Again, not saying specifically Justin Taylor. I know that they know who he is and he's on the board and stuff. But a player like Justin Taylor, who's 6'6", he's athletic, he can attack and close up, but he can also make a shot. I feel like that's a need that this team has. They're good at the guard position. They have the hybrid four guys, as you mentioned, and all that type of stuff. But in order for this defense to hum, there has to be a rim protector. There has to be a shot blocker in the middle of the paint who can rebound. And I just want to see what a shot maker looks like with some size on this team.
You see that case in point when Manny Bates isn't on the floor with this team. I mean, the one game he didn't play, 32-point loss to Florida State. They scored 105 points. Not to say it's going to be like that every time he's not on the court, but to your point, very important to have that type of guy. But thank you, Jamie, for joining us today. Very gracious with your time. So, again, please go support him. Follow his YouTube channel at Absolute Basketball. Give him a follow on Twitter at JamieShaw5. Follow us on Twitter at The Wolfpacker. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. Give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. Remember to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. And lastly, use that promo code PACK60 at thewolfpacker.com for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis. For Jamie Shaw of Absolute Basketball and Matt Carter of the Wolfpacker, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.